We're really lucky right now because we've had most of it replaced, but there's still this piece down here. We mitigate the danger of this fencing by having electric, like a hot wire on it. And electric fencing, it's not a cruel thing at all, right? The shock isn't really a lot worse than what you might get if you walk across a carpet and then touch something metal in your house. It kind of zaps you, but it's not horrible. It's not painful per se, you know, but it does keep the horse off the fence, which is our goal. So if you look at this fencing, I'll see if I can get a close-up of it for you. And this is called page wire fencing. Okay, can you see that? It's pretty awful. As you can see, the square itself is pretty huge, right? Like that's a big space that the horse can get his whole foot through here if he were going to. And the problem, as if that's not bad enough, but what the problem is, when the horse brings his foot back, that's when the problem hits, because now he can get his shoe, the back of his shoe caught on that, and now he's really stuck. And if the horse panics, as he's apt to do, he's going to take half his foot off trying to extricate himself from this kind of fencing. So it's a pretty dangerous fence. It's great for cattle, apparently. Not that I've ever kept cattle, but I understand it's pretty safe fencing for cattle, but it's not great for horses. So as you can see, I think you can see anyway, we have a hot wire running across the top of it. That's the wire I almost always touch when I don't mean to. Anyway. As any of you guys who have horses knows, horses are hugely expensive, and fencing is also very, very expensive. It's something that you have to maintain all the time, right? So if you're in a situation like we were for a number of years, where you have to use fencing like this, just try to keep the horse safe by keeping an electric wire on it and making sure that you check your electric wire to make sure it's working all the time. So you'll see, relative to my hand, the size of that those mesh openings are pretty small. And then it just has a top rail on it, and it's from post to post. This works. It should have been made tighter. It really needs to be installed with a machine that sort of winches it along. There was a farm close to us years ago that kept racehorses, and they used to use this kind of fencing. I used to always think of this as schoolyard fencing, but I imagine it worked for them. There's also this kind, which is square mesh, but again, you can see it's got the top rail and everything, but it never was tight enough. Like we should have gotten a machine that would have, pulled it tighter. But the squares are a good size, and the horse can't get his foot through any of these. We were really fortunate to have all of our fencing replaced with a very traditional and safe post and rail. So this is our new fencing. Well, new a couple of years ago. And it's 3 rails of oak fencing. So here's Cash showing how to be on the right side of the fence. So if Cash were to push on that board right now, it would just get tighter. While if Cash was on my side of the fence, it would get looser. Does that make sense? So if Cash were on this side, he could push that right off so that these nails would come right out. Because a horse is very strong that way, right? So a horse could easily do that, but because he's on the right side, the correct side, if he were to rub against the fence at all, he would just make the boards tighter. So the ideal situation, of course, is like having a runway like this so that Radley is on his own fence line, pushing the boards tighter, a runway in between, and Cash is on his side, also, if he were to push, making the boards tighter. But a lot of the times you can't have this situation. It's kind of a luxury, really, and so the horses end up having to share a fence line. So this is the part of my farm where the horses have to share the fence line. And so what we've done is, in order to keep those guys away from the horses in this field, we've just added hot wire to the fence, and hopefully that discourages these two from bothering the guys that are over here. There's one kind of fencing that I would never use with horses. I had to find a picture of this on the internet to show you what it looks like. That's barbed wire fencing, and I think, in my opinion, you're just looking for trouble using that anywhere near horses. So just to sum up then, the best kind of fencing is probably, I should say, the most traditional kind of fencing and safe for horses is a post and rail like I was showing you. A lot of the newer barns now are going with the diamond mesh fencing. That's the one that has the very small squares, and when that's done well with a machine that pulls it really tight, that's fantastic fencing. It's not great the way we did it because we tried to do it by hand and it got a little bit too sloppy and loose. So there we go, another video about how horses can get themselves hurt. It's amazing, really, when you think about it, the way our equine friends can figure out ways to get into trouble. But it's really, when you think about it, it's not their fault, right? Because everywhere we put a horse, the environment is not natural. Horses are meant to have no head collars on, wandering in the plains with nothing to get caught up on. We bring them outside. We have, oftentimes we leave leather head collars or nylon head collars on horses when they're outside. There's all sorts of things they can get caught up on, fencing and things like that. So we have to always be kind of one step ahead of our horses and trying to figure out how can they get hurt and how can we avoid them getting hurt like that. So that's it for this week. If you're watching this anywhere besides at our blog, which is at ismyhorsehappy.com, go on over there, scroll down and leave a message, leave a comment, leave a question like Linda did. Thank you, Linda. And we'll talk to you next week. Remember to thank your horse. Talk to you then.